Today we're going to take a look at Death Note. And I have no idea why I put so much emphasis on the word death, but oh well. Now Death Note is a very popular anime. Actually, it still is pretty popular, but I'd say the popularity of it over the years have definitely died down since when it first came out. But even then, it's still a very well-known anime to many anime watchers. So without further ado, let's go on to the story. And it follows the character Light Yagami, who is a straight-A high school student, and one day while he was walking home he ends up finding a book on the ground called a Death Note. And inside the book it says some instructions on how to use it, like writing people's names in it actually kills them. So what Light ends up doing is that he wants to try it just to see if it'll work. So he ends up trying it on some random criminal who happens to be announced on TV. And as you already know, it actually works and kills him by a heart attack. Yeah, that happens to be the main death that happens within this anime, is that it happens to be heart attacks. And after realizing that the power that this Death Note has, Light gets a very ambitious idea to rid the world of criminals, meaning that he wants to write down all the criminals' names and kill them all, but only keeping the innocent people alive and creating his own utopia that way. And then someone randomly sneaks into Light's room, and it happens to be someone that doesn't even look like a human being named Ryuk. And Ryuk was the person who originally owned that Death Note that Light owns, and he said he dropped it randomly. Yeah, I guess he had butterfingers that day. But anyways, Ryuk is a Shimigami. Well, the word means death god, and Shimigamis can only live by killing off humans off the world, which is why they use a Death Note. And no one can see these Shimigamis except for people that have a Shimigami eyes or carry a Death Note. So Ryuk mostly follows around Light wherever he goes, and tells him about certain things about the Death Note, but he claims to be not an ally with Light, meaning that he won't help him if he's ever in deep shit. So what ends up happening is that the police are coming onto these people that are strangely dying by heart attacks that are just happening spontaneously at the same time, and only to criminals in prison. So they think that someone is killing these people of heart attacks somehow. Also, Light's dad is one of the investigators on this case, so of course Light has to be extra careful. But the person who is really after Light, or what they know him as Kira, yeah, that's what they call him by his serial killer nickname, is someone that goes by the name of L. And L is known to be one of the greatest detectives around the world. So Light and L are pretty much having a rivalry, where they're trying to outsmart each other's plans. And trust me, there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes into this one. But I'm not going to end it there just yet, but I want to go into other things, such as someone else getting involved named Miss Amane. Well, Misa Amane. Now she's a famous model, and she happens to have the Shimigami eyes and a Death Note herself, and she manages to meet up with Light, because she can see Ryuk following him. Also, I'll mention this right now, but if you have the Shimigami eyes, you can pretty much see everyone's name above their heads and see their lifespan. And because she is obsessed with the work of Kira, and finds out that Light Yagami is Kira, she ends up falling in love with him, and will do anything that Light says. But they mostly work together like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing, but you know, with Death Notes. And now I'm gonna stop it right there, because yeah, like I said, there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes into here, but if I have to say one thing, is that this show is like very genius, and I really like the creativity that it has, and it's definitely well thought out. And of course I'm not gonna spoil anything, because this show is definitely worth watching. So continuing right along, let's take a look at animation. And I think the animation is definitely looking good for this one. Like, it's dark, and you know, you expect that because the show is pretty dark after all. And it's really suiting in that kind of way, and well, I really don't have much complaints to say about that, so really, the animation is just good the way it is. And as for the voice acting, I think it's pretty good, but I think the best is probably the main cast. And for the main cast, you have Brad Swale and Brian Drummond, and then there's Alessandro Julian and Kathy Westlock, and that's the main cast, and I think they did a really good job with it. And as for the other cast members, I think they did do a good job, but definitely not as good as the main cast. But I won't say that they're downright terrible. In fact, it's not even like okay, it's just pretty good. But overall, I think the voice acting is actually pretty good. And as for the music, and yes, we're going to talk about music in this one, well, the music is generally very suiting for this kind of anime, which is really good. And just so you guys know, whenever I don't mention music in these reviews, it's not because I think that they're bad or just uninspiring, it's just because most of these animes do have music that is suiting to their themes, but the only times I will mention it is if it's something I think is at least worth noting. And as for here, well, I have to say, Light's theme in this show is really fucking good. And for me personally, I think it kinda sounds like a 70s progressive rock song, and well, I think that's awesome. And it's also worth noting that Elle's theme kind of reminds me of the Exorcist theme. It amused me when I realized that. But overall, the soundtrack for this show is definitely really good. Now as for the score, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. It's definitely a great anime to watch. It's very interesting, it's also very unique for its time, and I find it to be very enjoyable overall with the characters, the concept, and some of the ways how they do things within this show. It's definitely very memorable, and I know there are some people that said that the show is a bit overrated because, you know, it is very popular and whatnot, but this is one of those cases where I actually don't mind the fact that it's really popular because I'd rather something that is good be popular than something that is just, you know, just okay or something that's just, you know, is just crap. Although, of course, there's gonna be some people that are gonna be all like, oh, this show is, like, perfect, there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But, no, this show isn't perfect, but it is good. Very good. So, hey, a 9 out of 10 for me is definitely what I think is right for this kind of show. So, before I end things here today, I'm gonna say one quick thing, and that is, I'm gonna take a potato chip and stare at it immensely, and then put it back in the bag. Yeah, what, you thought I was gonna eat it or something? Yeah, what, are you fucking crazy?